Hello and welcome, everyone. Before we get started, I would like to briefly just go over some housekeeping. We have a great webinar today with Ellucian. Just very briefly, if you would like to turn on your closed captions, you may do so by going to the bottom panel of Zoom. And this webinar is recorded, so it will be available for you on our ACRO website shortly after the actual webinar, so please go ahead and check that out as well. Also, please feel free to share the webinar with your colleagues, and we will be taking questions in the Q&A feature, so please go ahead and utilize the Q&A feature to ask questions. The panelists will be answering the questions towards the end of the presentation. And I would like to just very briefly introduce our panelists today. So today we have guests from Ellucian and the Yeshiva University to take us through a discussion on maximizing recruitment efforts in navigating higher ed enrollment. So we have from Yeshiva University, we have Michelle Strum joining us, where Michelle is the Senior Assistant Director of Student Aid. And from Ellucian, we have Tim Dawson, Principal Solutions Consultant, and Janelle Lindsay, Solutions Consultant, joining us. And just very briefly, I would like to go over the agenda today, and I will hand it over to Tim. On our agenda, Tim will start us off by taking us through how personalizing your outreach is key. Then we will jump into a conversation with Janelle and Michelle, where they will share with us examples of how Yeshiva is reaching prospective students with specialized communication. We will have safe time, as I said, at the end of the presentation for Q&A. But please feel free to write your questions in at any time. You may also ask anonymously if you wish. And without any further ado, I would like to hand it over to Tim. Thank you, Tim.
Great. Thank you very much, Belma. And thank you all for joining us today. My pleasure to be with you and to talk about enrollment and how Ellucian can assist you in maximizing your enrollment. As Belma said, my name is Tim Dawson, Principal Solutions Consultant. I've had the pleasure of working with Ellucian now for 10 years on this side of the software, but spent 20 years on your side of the software in enrollment management. And if there's one thing that I've learned in my time in those 30 years, it's personalization is key. It truly is the way in which we engage students effectively. I mean, think about it for ourselves. The way in which we really connect with organizations, companies that are marketing to us, people that are selling us items, right? It's about the fact that they're thinking about us and what matters to us. So let's apply that same thing to higher education and to our prospective students and really craft our messages and our communication to what the students care about most. So I'm going to walk you through some of those key items throughout our solution, CRM Recruit. That constituent relationship management tool is all about personalizing that connection with students. And that means giving and collecting personalized information. So as much as we can throughout your admissions funnel, let's collect the right kinds of information from the students and then deliver to them, once they've given us that information, the kinds of content that matter to them. What are they interested in? What are their programs of study? What are their extracurriculars? Let's not bombard them with every piece of information we have, but let's focus that on the areas that matter to them. And then that great data is going to give us centralized information so that we're all looking at the same student file, whether that is a prospect, an inquiry, an applicant, or an enrolling student. We have one central place where we can see all of that communication, all of that personalized communication and that engagement. And then at the end of the day, we'll have one centralized dashboard where each of us, depending on our own roles, again, personalized for ourselves, we'll have our own roles that we can then understand. Are we hitting the mark? Do I have a list of students I need to reach out to? How are we doing toward that goal of X or Y? But having that centralized place. How is that event? Did having that open house or going to that college fair, did it really yield any kind of results for us? And so having that personalization where we get to the information we need is critical. So with that, let's take a look at some of these tools now and see how CRM Recruit can provide you that specific personalization. So I'm going to start at the beginning of a student journey. And I have on the screen now, what could replicate here a cell phone, but we're going to make this a little larger so we all can see. But it's a chance for your students to personalize their own information. So whether this be a QR code that they have scanned at a college fair, or they've gone to your website, the student is going to be able to log in here, creating an account, and then coming back when they need to and take a look at the information that you're providing to them. Again, this could be when your counselors are out at a college fair or a high school visit, and they're having the student fill out that inquiry form right there on their phones or a tablet that they've provided, and it's going to then immediately deliver this personalized information. Of course, all of this is going to be personalized for your institution, configured to your campus look and feel, your logo, your colors as well. But the student will then have the ability to come in and update their information. So here we have a student, David Katz from Michigan, who has filled out this information, and he's interested in business technology. Notice over here on the right, this program Spotlight is delivering content specifically around business technology. This is tremendous for guided pathways. If you're following a guided pathways model, and let's say your students are interested in just in general in business, let's provide them then some pathways information about what areas could they study in business. But this is highlighting the things that matter to them. And with most prospective students, they're going to change their mind. They might even change their address at some point or their email address, but certainly changing their major is going to be pretty common. And so the student could come in and say, no, I'm interested more in biology, save that information. And of course, we're now going to deliver them personalized content about your biology or science programs. This extends then into things like events and the application. So maybe David is excited about the campus and the biology program and wants to come for a visit. The student can personalize your events calendar to only look for certain dates, look for certain types of events, even locations. So if you have a campus recruiting staff that goes off campus and goes to college fairs and high school visits in your region or even around the world, the student could then put in a location and say, who's coming within 25 miles of my zip code or 50 miles of my zip code, and then they can see what events are coming up. So whether it be a college fair, an open house, even your private visits for them to schedule their own campus tours. David's excited about coming to an open house. There's one coming up on March 2nd. And so he can see all of the information that you once wished to provide. This is all configurable marketing for you, but now the student can register. When he's registering for that event, another great opportunity for you to collect even more information so you can now personalize this detail for David. So David, again, may choose to change his major. He may be bringing a guest to campus. What a great opportunity now to collect things like mom or dad's information. And so if, mom is coming with him and we want to collect mom's email address, we've now got the opportunity to follow up and communicate with that parent, or maybe it's a friend, a sibling, a significant other that's coming. We've got some information that we can collect and then communicate appropriately. Of course, this is a CRM, so as he's registering, we're sending him a welcome email. We're also sending follow-ups, and right before March 2nd, of course, sending him a reminder, maybe even the day before with parking instructions and so forth. All of this, again, personalized content for him, including the application. So as David's ready to take that step, whether he's coming from the outside on your website, directing here without creating an account, or coming in through this portal as he's created his personalization, you can now deliver multiple types of applications. We have 3 distinctly different applications here. You might have one type of application that segments throughout, or maybe start from the beginning with a brand new application. He's going to come in as an undergraduate student, already assuming the biology program that he has said he's interested in, and now it will begin to pre-fill that application with the data we already know about him. Let's not make him refill out data, add more information. And so you can see we've already assumed biology, but David's probably changing his mind already, and maybe now he's interested in, let's say, nursing. And so we can come down to that list of majors and he can select nursing. Now, if you notice, there's now some supplemental questions that have been added to this application. Because he has asked or said that he's interested in nursing, we have some questions we need to ask him. Talk about personalization. We want that application to be as small as possible, ask the basic questions, and as the student tells us more about themselves, let's collect that information. For instance, maybe you have a very vibrant study abroad program and the student says, yes, they're interested. What an opportunity now to market to that student, and who wouldn't want to study in Australia? So he's going to tell us, yes, if I can study abroad, I'd love to study in Australia. You have more opportunity to continue to recruit David with this great information. The same goes for things like financial aid. Are they planning to apply for financial aid? Opportunity now to say, here's a student where we definitely need to reach out. Maybe they're going to apply for a scholarship. Let's help encourage them with some great financial literacy and some information about scholarships. Now, our application here is huge. We've got a ton of things here. That's not intended for you to use every question, but you build this based on your need. Short application, long application, whatever questions are necessary. But again, as the student answers certain questions, we're going to extend those to further follow up with that student need. For instance, is this student a veteran? Have they served in the armed forces? Yes. Well, then where did you serve? What kind of service did you provide? How long was that? Now we've collected some great veterans information, again, to follow up and personalize that information. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole application today, but I want to get to the very end here and submit this application for David. You've got short answer questions, maybe essays. You've got some things that are required. You can decide what questions must be asked. And so here's some of those certification questions at the very end. We'll answer all of those yes for David, and we'll go ahead and do an electronic signature and submit this application. Now, that application is being submitted. Depending on the student type, there are going to be additional follow-up. For instance, we need an application fee for David for this application, but he came to that open house, and at the open house, we gave him a fee waiver, so he can now apply that fee waiver. Now there's no application fee. Otherwise, that can be directed through your payment gateway. We can collect that $50 or whatever that application fee is. And now we can come back and check that application status, see where he is, and notice that we've got action required for this application. Right over here, I can view that action, and we can see what supplemental items are necessary. Again, because of his profile. If he had told us he was an international student, needed a visa, we're going to see a longer list of supplemental items. In this case, we just need an essay. And so let's come in, let's find a document here that we can upload. We're going to upload an essay, and now we've got all of the information we need as far as what's required from that supplemental items list. You can also ask for references. So if you want the student to provide you with that email address for that guidance counselor or that person that's going to write that recommendation, you can then manage that recommendation for them by sending that questionnaire to that person on their behalf. And then that manages and expedites that process as well. So back to our portal here. You're all going to notice one thing that's different on this page, and I trust that you'll see that nursing information because David has told us now nursing is his area of interest. Of course, that program spotlight is going to change. We have created the information that's necessary and important to him so that we can address his needs and personalize and maximize our enrollment efforts. So let's see what this looks like on your side now as a staff member. So as a staff member, you're going to have a dashboard that is configured to your needs depending on your role. In this case, I could be in as a recruiter. So maybe I'll have a traditional recruitment dashboard, and you can see the types of dashboards that we deliver here. But as a traditional recruiter or admissions counselor, I'm going to have my daily tasks. I know in my time as a director of admission, one of the things that I spent a lot of time on, which was supervising and making sure those staff were doing what they needed to do. Here we've set that policy up. This is the steps and procedures that we want you to go through. These are the daily tasks we want you to accomplish or outreach we want you to do, and it's going to be listed here for that staff member. And so here you can see, in this case, we've got several students who need to come to orientation, and that counselor needs to get them registered. Here's an application that needs to be reviewed. And then here are all the overdue tasks for that staff member. Clearly, as a manager, I have my own dashboard to see that as well and can follow up with why the staff member is not completing all of those actions. But quick and easy dashboards configured to the needs that I have as that staff member. Let's take a look at David's record now and jump over to that. We can easily search for anybody with the last name Katz. David happens to be right there at the top. Let's open up David's record. David has one person record in CRM Recruit. This is great because David might have multiple applications. He might have multiple personas throughout this system. In this case, we've got that one application and we have one opportunity to recruit him. If David had been a dual enrollment student prior to this, we would have two opportunities. We would have one opportunity for the fall of 2023 when he came in as a high school student and dual enrolled, and then we would have that fall of 24 application information because we're recruiting him now for a second opportunity. This was one of the biggest hurdles I had in enrollment management, was understanding the distinction between a student who's already on my campus taking dual enrollment courses and who's really a prospective student. This allows me to focus that in on the opportunity based on their application and their status. On this page, though, as a general person, I can see a variety of data about David. I can even see whether his address was accurate or not. No fake addresses coming into the system. It's going to let us know based on USPS standards if this is an accurate address or not. And then here's all of our communication that we've already sent to David. So when David came in for the first time, there was a staff member assigned to make a welcome phone call. We've got his essay that was just submitted with that application. And of course, the registration for the open house is here as well. So all of that communication centralized for all of us to see. And then I can focus in on his specific application. Here I can see the activity and where he is in the pipeline. And congratulations, David, he was admitted 1 minute ago. Because we have auto acceptance open, if you have an open enrollment, everything that was needed was collected. We gave that student an immediate response. But it's going to tell me how long is he sitting in each of these stages of the funnel. You can obviously assume then that we can take action if that student sits at the applicant stage for too long without it being completed, or maybe even they get hung up in the review stage. Or heaven forbid, they stay as an inquiry for too long. We can move that communication along and again, configure that message to make sure we're reaching out to them. So all of this in one central spot. Remember that study abroad question? There's a highlight letting me know that study abroad is interesting to him. So I can now enhance my communication, whether I'm on the phone with him or sending out personalized communication. And because this is a CRM, it is all about those communications. So let me show you a communication flow that personalizes those messages. I'm going to come here to our communications plan. We're going to look at this inquiry to applicant communication flow. I'm going to open up the plan editor because you can really visualize how this flow works. Here we go with an introduction email right away after they inquire. We wait a week and then we create a list for the mailroom to send out mail. If you're still putting things in envelopes, we can now personalize that information packet and send that out to the student. 10 days later, another email goes out letting them know that we want them to take the next steps to apply. 3 days later, this is where we start to micro-target students. So if that student's in a specific major, they're going to start receiving specific kinds of contact and follow-up. If they're a STEM student, they're going to receive specific types of follow-up. That includes tasks for someone to call. That includes letters. That would include email, as well as text messages. All of those things happening based on the student's profile. The system's going to allow you to determine who are your highly desirable students, and that way you can focus maybe your intentions or your more detailed communication to those specific students that have been indicated as highly desirable, honors program, so on and so forth. This is all configurable by you. This is just one example, but you could create as many types of communication streams as necessary to meet your enrollment targets. But again, the goal is for us to be able to specialize that communication, to focus that down onto their specific needs. And then bringing it all home together into one place. So a variety of dashboards for you to monitor and manage the kinds of activities that are taking place. For instance, in our recruitment, and we have spent a ton of money on travel. And I don't know about you, but in my time, having the right decisions about where to go was a pretty data and labor intensive process. Here, I can manage my travel and look at a summary of my travel because we have managed each of our events, that college fair, that high school visit, that open house, all around events or travel. And so if we were off campus and going to the Midwest or doing our international events or our Western events or the local events, here I can see the return on my investment based on those events. This local event you can see is the highest return on our investment. Our international was obviously the most expensive, but did a decent amount of return. All of that because we're using one central place to record our events and the results of those events. This was probably a task that my staff would undergo. It would take them about a week. Every May, after May 1, we would start to kind of review our year and see how things went. How were the college fairs? How were the high school visits? Here, we've got all of that data in one place to give us that quick and easy answer. And then as a manager, you've got that dashboard that says, how are my staff doing completing their tasks that I've assigned them? Here you can see all of my overdue activities by staff members. In fact, Sydney Anderson has 148 activities that they need to complete. So as a manager, I can drill in and see, what do I need to do to help Sydney complete those activities? Or what do I need to do to help Sydney find a new career? Because this one's not working out for them. You as a manager have that level of access. And then how many things are being completed? And here Casey is clearly knocking it out of the park. But maybe that's a little off, and I need to understand, what's Casey really doing? Are they really completing these activities? But you've got that information at your fingertips. And then for all of those managers, or for those C-suite level folks who want to understand, how are we doing toward our recruitment goals? You can deliver for your management, for those executives at the president's cabinet, their own dashboard to see those goals. For good or bad, they could come in and see those at any time, night or day, and see, how are we doing in meeting our goals. So here we can see we have a goal of having increased numbers of females in our STEM program. How are we doing toward that goal, both in a pie chart and in a funnel format? All of this, again, to personalize the information, to bring it to you specifically for your needs. That's all through CRM Recruit. And so what you've seen, you saw that personalized information bringing in the data from the student so that we can give them the right kind of message, a central dashboard to see all of those communications, and then that overall view so we can understand how we're doing toward meeting our goals, really maximizing our enrollment efforts. So now we're going to take a moment. We're going to pause. We're going to ask you a few questions. And so I'm going to turn things over to Belma and have her ask you some questions. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Tim. All right, so let's go ahead and get a poll going for you. I will launch it, and if you could please take some time to answer. There are only 2 questions for you to answer. Okay, here we go. The poll should be open now. Here we go. All right, if you could participate, we'd really appreciate it. All right, first question is, how would you rate your students' financial aid literacy? And looks like we're getting some answers here. Wonderful. And the second question is, the estimated costs for each part of the higher education experience, such as tuition, housing, books, transportation, and meals, are communicated clearly and accurately at my institution. All right. Go. And I'll just give you a few more moments before I end the poll. Okay, here we go. Let's go ahead and share the results. Okay. Excellent. So you should be able to see some of the results that we have for question 1 and 2. And more about these 2 questions, we will have Janelle go over, and I'd like to hand it over to Janelle.
Thank you so much, Belma. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a privilege to be with you today. I'm Janelle Lindsay, and I serve as a solutions consultant with Ellucian. And before I came to Ellucian, I spent my career in higher education, mainly in retention programs and supporting students. And as far as the poll goes, before we get into Campus Communicator and talking about platform, you said that financial literacy was fair for the most part at your institutions, and that communication clearly regarding some of the milestones that students need to achieve was, you agreed that it was handled pretty well on your campuses, which is a great thing regarding that communication. So now, as we get into Campus Communicator, I'm excited to share some information with you about the platform and how it supports institutions with communicating to students. A few of the words that may describe Campus Communicator are welcoming, intuitive, personalized, and dynamic. So even though we as higher education professionals have spent a good deal of time and effort to communicate with students and clearly communicating with students, it still is a challenge for us today. So think of Campus Communicator as a visual way for you to open the door for students as they enter your campus. You're meeting them where they are so they can effectively and smoothly achieve the necessary milestones that you have set forth for them. Also, you can think about it as if you have any digital or milestone or checkpoint, it's a digital way for you to categorize your milestones or any checkpoint that you have for students. All of that can be done through Campus Communicator. You're able to personalize that welcome for students to help them know that they belong on your campus. And now, as we get into the discussion point, we're joined this afternoon by Michelle Strum, the Senior Assistant Director of Student Aid at Yeshiva University in New York. She is going to discuss their process and experience with utilizing Campus Communicator. Welcome, Michelle, and thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about Campus Communicator and what it's done for Yeshiva University.
Fantastic. So, but to begin the discussion, please share with us how you were notifying students of financial aid and billing communications, such as award notifications, before you all moved to Campus Communicator.
Yeah, that is a fantastic question. A lot of time was spent to populate the letters, since the award letters had a lot more manual processes along with it. So from the get-go, when we received the student's application, we'd review their FAFSA application, which is the financial aid application for higher education students interested in colleges to be able to receive aid. There was reviewing the application, providing financial aid awards, and then obviously trying to let the students know what that looked like. Many times the process would take, it would be a couple people involved. So there'd be the imports, there'd be the manual process of actually putting the letter together. And then we even would print them out and physically mail them, like we're talking stamps and everything. And the biggest drawback with that was that it took forever sometimes for students to get their packages, their financial aid packages. We did also email students as well, but we didn't have any confirmation or way of knowing if the information was received, if they understood it. So there was definitely a gap and a barrier for us to be able to communicate with our students in that practice. Additionally, there was a lot more confusion with the information on the award letter. Sorry, my apologies. I know we're moving towards aid notification letter, and away from award letter. But there was confusion on what the information on the letter was. So when we would provide from the FAFSA application, grants, scholarships, loans, there was a misunderstanding quite frequently of, do I have to have the loan? What is this loan? How do I get this scholarship? Is this something that I have, or is there further work for me to do? So there was a lot more questions that would arise when the parents or students would be looking at the award letter, the aid notification that was sent to them. So it was very hard for us to be able to, I shouldn't say hard, it was just very labor intensive because a lot more time would be spent on the phone with parents and students going over line by line by line what that aid looked like. And what it was that they were actually receiving, like who was the source of that aid, and how is that something they're able to receive? Is there an action that they need to do in order to receive it? Sometimes there's paperwork required for financial aid that they need to submit. So all these questions would come up, and it was very labor intensive. Thank God we get a large, applicant pool. So being able to provide that information took time. There was
Thank you.
also,
Oh, sorry, Michelle,
sure.
go ahead.
No,
Go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say there's also like very little of like, okay, we're interested in coming to Yeshiva University. What do we do next? There was no action step required for a lot of students with the paper award letter or even the email award letter. And I think that one of the biggest drawbacks from the previous system was if we were waiting for undeliverable mail, it would take a couple weeks for the post office to send us those return letters that didn't have the ones that were able to be reached by the applicant that we were trying to connect with. The emails that were bounced, it was also very difficult to go through those strings. So that is definitely some of the things that we saw happening for Campus Communicator.
Thank you so much. And before we jump into after Campus Communicator, you talked about time in your discussion about putting stamps on envelopes and actually sending it through USPS. So how long ago were you actually putting stamps on envelopes to mail information to your students?
Yeah,
How
that
more
was
recently?
pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID, so about 4
COVID,
years
yeah.
ago, you say?
Yeah, COVID pushed us into doing a lot more email communication.
Okay. Thank you for that. All right. So now let us look at after Campus Communicator, and now that you have it. So talk through your experience now that you have implemented the platform.
Yeah, definitely. So from the get-go, implementing Campus Communicator was very seamless. The transition time from getting us set up from the start to finish did not take long. It was incredibly simple to be able to work with our representative. At the time, we were working with a wonderful representative. Her name was Kat, who very instantly, just after having a couple conversations with us, understood and was able to guide us on how to create that letter in a way that'll target our applicants, current students and returning students, and even now our graduate students we use the template for. So that process, from the get-go was very, very seamless. It now allows us to send email communication with students and also text messages. So students will receive, an email from Yeshiva University, student aid, and at the same time, a text message will also be deployed. The beauty in that is many of our young 18, 19-year-olds are on their phone, checking their emails, checking their text messages, and they're able to receive that super quickly and forward it over to their parents. So very quickly, that conversation could open up of, is Yeshiva University affordable, and how do we access, the aid that we're being offered? So the conversation very quickly changed. Not only that, we found that it was very easy for parents and students to digest the information that was provided, because the items of what is my scholarship was very simply laid out. Is this a loan was very simply laid out, rather than students, focusing on, I used to be, sitting there with the students going line by line of like, I'm not sure I understand this. The next question instead that we found that we were getting a lot more after we began sending out the award letters through Campus Communicator was not the how do we understand this, but it was more how do we get more money? Which meant they totally understood exactly what their award was and what they were able to receive, which was wonderful, because that took us all the way to the next conversation with students and families of making Yeshiva University affordable for students and parents across the board. So it was very nice to be able to do that. One of the key benefit factors of us having that understanding for students and families is there are hover-overs on top of the grants, on top of the scholarships, on top of words that might be, harder to understand. So that way, while they're looking at the template that they've received, they're able to understand the source of the aid, what that aid is, if there's anything that they have to do for that information, which helps prevent a lot of the questions that we would get when there wasn't that understanding of what it was we were able to provide. We have found our undergrad and graduate program, financial aid works a little bit differently. And we found that it was very easy for us to customize our template, both for graduate students and undergraduate. Initially, when we first launched with Campus Communicator, we were using it with our undergraduate population. But because our open rates were wonderful, we decided to transition that as well into our graduate program, and use that to be able to provide the same information of what is my grants and scholarships and loans, what is my out-of-pocket cost going to look like to our graduate students as well as our undergrad population. And very notably, we don't have to wait for the undeliverable mail to come to our office. We are able to see within minutes the list of undeliverables, which very often the common cause is students that put their high school email address and are no longer in that high school. So automatically we'll get like that bounce back email, and we just go in the system quickly, see what their most up-to-date email is, and just resend it, reissue that template. So that way there's no time or, waiting to find out who still needs that letter.
Well, that is a really good testament as far as how Campus Communicator has changed the life of your staff and you, as well as your prospective students and their families, in communicating, understanding what's going on and what is needed at Yeshiva. One quick question I do have is, now that all of this happened, Michelle, what have you done with your time and within your staff and in your office?
So now I could speak for myself. Like, I know my boss, Bob, shout out, he very much is like, okay, I'm going to give you some new tasks now. So instead of, spending time answering those phone calls, I am now spending more time focusing on things like verification, the federal work study program, a lot of the things that require a lot more, things that are time consuming. Verification requires follow-up. It does, sometimes there are questions along the way that happens, work studies, a whole program within itself.
Yes.
So it's nice to be able to focus on other needs in our office as well.
And it better helps students, of course, right?
100%.
And also with your workflow and making sure things go well for you as well. You mentioned, let's see, so you also talked about how things have changed. So how has the volume, you talked about the volume that happened before and after Campus Communicator. So what have the questions shifted to now? You said about how much more money can I get? What other kinds of questions are coming about now?
Well, it's a really good question. So the questions now that are coming up outside of how could I get more money? Is questions like, what do I do next? Some might still have questions about the admissions and what it is Yeshiva University offers, which that's one of the beauties of Campus Communicator is we have provided the admissions department with access to be able to view what that award letter looks like.
Mm-hmm.
So when they're having a conversation with the students as well that are interested in coming to Yeshiva, they're able to say, like, you were like, for a student that, let's say, is interested in early childhood, we have a scholarship for that, they'll be able to see that information as well. And when they're talking to the student, they could bring that up as part of the conversation. I know you have questions about it, but I do see that you were, a recipient of the early childhood scholarship, and be able to navigate the conversation on an admission side as well, because student aid and admissions go very much hand in hand. Student aid is a huge part of students being able to access education and being able to attend college successfully. So being able to have the conversation both on our end of the nitty gritty of how do I get the money, but also the nitty gritty of, what's next for me of, okay, I like this financial aid award. How do I then move forward?
Great. Thank you for all of that information. And we're going to take a look at one of your Campus Communicator letters for financial aid, and you're going to walk us through that as well. So give me just a second to
Sure.
get out of this and into that letter.
Yeah, this is my baby. Like, I am so proud of this letter. Like, it was a lot of fun creating it, just being able to explore the different ways that, we were able to present information in a way that also resonated with different generations. Like the students that were, that are coming into college are like 18, 19, young folks, but the information has to also be understandable by people that are, their parents are in their 40s, 50s. So being able to populate things in a way that met both generations, all generations is I don't know, makes me excited.
It's critical, right? Because we know that We know how important family is to our culture and our world, right? So you have to be able to talk across and through, right?
100%.
And this gives you that opportunity to do that, or it has given you the opportunity to do that. Oh,
Yeah, thank you
oh,
so much, Janelle.
you are so
Um,
welcome. And here is your letter. So talk us through, as you call it, your baby. Go ahead.
Thank you. If you could scroll up to the top of the page, or maybe that's just me. Perfect. Okay, so at the top, first and foremost, we make it very easy for students to find the information of, what campus they're attending, their student ID number, and the aid year that this letter is referring to. So over here, it does show that it's for the current aid year that's happening. So that's fall 2023 and spring 2024. The beauty in this is it helps us, target, the population of student directly to the student without it being very general. For our graduate program, we even include their major, like their program that they're in. So for a student that's doing an MBA, it'll show that they're which location they're in, and it'll show their major as well, so they're able to see what those costs look like. At the beginning, we have a hype video, so that way the students are excited. If there's anything that they're, want to see what it looks like. This is a video just to get students excited with an idea of, maybe like a little bit of what the campus looks like. There's in the video, there's like some of the classes, so you're able to kind of just get an idea of what the feel of Yeshiva University is. One of the unique items about Yeshiva University is we have both a men's campus and a women's campus. So this one specifically highlights the women's campus. If you scroll down a little bit, Janelle, over here we have the congratulation on their acceptance. And we open up with our pride and joy of what is our grants and what grants and scholarships am I being offered. And the beauty of this is from the get-go, they're able to see what of their aid is grants and scholarships. Because the question that I always try to reinforce to students and parents when they're exploring colleges is, what free money am I able to have? What is money that does not need to be paid back? So over here, we see that the student, she is receiving the federal Pell Grants. And the hover over next to it will say something if you've been selected for verification, meaning if there's additional paperwork required for you to receive this aid, that's something that you need to do in order to receive the federal Pell Grants. Underneath it, we have the New York State TAP Grant, where we put in there the student like school code, because that school code is different than the FAFSA one. They have a school code of 1085, so we make sure to provide that information for them as well. So if there's any paperwork with New York State, they're able to quickly access and go to their portal as well. The student specifically, she was eligible for a Dean's Scholarship, which meant she met the admissions criteria for the Dean's Award, and she also received a need-based scholarship, the YU Scholarship, which was based on financial need, based on the information given on the FAFSA. And she could see the bottom number of the amount of grants and scholarships that she's being given from the get-go is $51,598. We try to be as transparent as possible when it comes to financial literacy. So we do illustrate the direct costs. The direct costs, as you can see the hover over for what is the estimate of my direct charges. The top question, it'll say, hold on, Janelle, do you mind going up for a second to what is the estimate of my direct charges hover over? It's okay. Perfect, it's right over there.
Here, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, further up in the blue bubble.
Oh,
yeah,
no,
over there. Perfect.
No, sorry.
So very often, part of financial literacy is not only understanding the amounts that are billed by Yeshiva University, but it's also understanding that there's going to be components that are not billed directly by Yeshiva University. So illustrating the amounts that are going to be coming from Yeshiva University. So when the family receives the first invoice from us, these are the items that they will see on their statement. We list out the cost of our tuition for the academic year, fees, housing, and the meal plan. Both the, items like the housing and the meal plan do have variance based on what meal they select, which is why we have the hover over to let them know that that amount may vary. Very clearly underneath it, we say what student loans are available to me, meaning these are the loans that this is something that you will need to pay back. So we open up with the free money, and then we open into the student loan. So that way they have an idea of, okay, this is my balance. Is there anything I could use to reduce that out-of-pocket cost? Which helps families and students understand if there's any, and what they're able to do in terms of bringing down that cost. If the parents are interested in a parent loan, we do list that as well. And underneath that, this is where we explain to the parents what the indirect costs are. So all these numbers are estimates based on, statistically, our experience of what the students, have been shown to, but these numbers do vary based on, the actual student themselves. I like to call this section like the life happens, because a student that's coming in from California, their transportation is going to be coming by an airplane versus, the one that's living in New York, their transportation might be a Metro card. Shout out to the subway system. Very clearly afterwards, we give the students the next steps. So if the student says, this was wonderful, what do I do next? We have that open directly to, they could just click number 1 and it'll take them right back to the admissions portal where they could deposit and indicate which semester they're interested in attending. So we could get them set up in securing their spot. Step 2, we'll bring them to their missing documents. So if there's any financial aid information they're missing, they'll be able to make sure that they're up to date there. Students living on campus can fill out the housing application. And as you see, these steps are very much directed in a way where it's very clear what the student has to do next. Lastly, we do provide information on the payments options per semester. So if parents are wondering when the time comes how to view your invoice or make a payment, all these items are available as different methods of payment for the semester.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for walking us through your whole process with Campus Communicator and how it has really changed everyone's life for the better, I'm going to say, at Yeshiva, both for you and the staff and for your students and their families. Thank you so much, Michelle. And hang on, because we will have some questions and answers in a few moments for you. But thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. And the Campus Communicator has been game changing. So I'm excited. I'm excited that we use it. So thank you.
You're so welcome. So glad to hear that. So now we're going to quickly take a look at a few other Campus Communicator communications that go out to students. And the first one that we're looking at is from the University of Arizona. Similar to Yeshivas, this is their offer letter, which goes into the estimated cost of attendance and the grants and scholarships and the information for what students may have to pay regarding their costs. One thing I also want to point out. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. One
thing that I also wanted to point out, or that we also are able, or you're able to embed videos within the letter itself to further explain what is the cost of attendance and different things that we are able to provide. As you can see, it can come through and it's already there for the students and their parents to review the information. The next letter is going to talk about what their students' academic advisor. So what is an academic advisor? Who are the student going to be assigned to? So again, as Michelle mentioned, their admissions office also utilizes Campus Communicator, and this is information that can also go through for students as you inform them of who their advisor is, example, meet your academic advisor. It also reminds students of key dates, additional support resources for students, career, and it can also go into recommending classes for students and can also tell students what their classes are themselves. And the last letter we will look at is a satisfactory academic progress status letter that goes out to students. And this one is from Fullerton College. So this is letting students know about their SAP progress and what their SAP status is, explaining what it is to them and what they need to do regarding their process. So again, like having the communication being very clear for students and providing them with the necessary information so they can make an informed decision on what they need to do to continue on in their process. So now, as we are looking at the information, and before we jump into Q&A, we wanted to make sure you were aware of the SaaS packages that Ellucian has available to nurture your funnel. So starting by bringing prospective students to you, guiding them through the application and financial aid process, through enrolling, and most importantly, making it across that graduation stage. These packages are the most cost-effective way to purchase Ellucian SaaS solutions and most of them can be implemented in as little as 90 days. To learn more about these packages, please reach out to your Ellucian account executive or let us know by responding to the next poll that Belma is going to put up in just a few moments. So I'm going to turn it over real quick to Belma for that poll.
Thank you, Janelle. Here we go. I will launch the last poll here. Here we go. All right, please take a moment to answer these two quick questions. All right, wonderful. Looks like we have some activity here. Here we go. Excellent. Thank you for your cooperation. I will go ahead and share the results. There you are. All right. Wonderful. And do we hand it over to Tim or?
We do have some questions that have come in. Belma, thank you very much. Thank you all so much for your time. So I'm going to answer some of those questions that come in about CRM Recruit, give Janelle a chance to take a look at some of the questions you have about Campus Communicator. So a couple of the questions came in about the student CX or constituent experience. And that was that portal, that beginning piece that the student was filling out, David. You may use that as an institution at any stage in the process. Some are using it early on as a prospective student, all the way through to enrollment. Others, someone asked about the Common Application, others may use it to direct students to the Common App. And so while there's an application built in, you don't have to use it. If you're using a third-party application, you can link the students from that portal out to that Common Application. Continue to use that tool, though, for the students to register for events, even all the way through to orientation programs and manage your events through orientation. Another question that came in was a couple of questions about texting. And so the texting features that are provided from CRM Recruit, we use partner Twilio that you would use to help keep us clean and whitelisted when you are messaging students, so you're not spamming students, but that also will help you with managing then any students who choose to stop out of those communications. In the system, you can record who has chosen which type of communication methods and then substitute other communications. If the student has wanted to stop the text messages, but it's essential information, you can replace that with an email or with a written letter if that's necessary. Another was asking about who implements Recruit. Is it by departments on campus? Typically, it is the enrollment management department on a campus that's obviously going to implement CRM Recruit. If you do have various recruiting offices within your campus, if you're a larger university recruiting by school, certainly they could, but you may also have every institute or every school within the institution utilizing one instance of that Recruit system. And then they would have their own communication streams, their own ways to accept applications and process those applications. So I think that answered a majority of those questions that came in from Recruit. I'll see if there are any others, or if Janelle, or if there are any questions for Michelle as well that have come in.
Thanks, Tim. There is one for you, Michelle, asking, how do you manage grant scholarship info when admitting students prior to financial aid awarding data processing? Oh, you're on mute. There you
Sorry.
go.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I'm assuming that means like if there's updates, or if there's any changes to the award. So let's say, for example, very commonly, sometimes students will go through verification process, and they might not receive the same, amount of Pell before the verification process as to after. So we will send revised award letters, as the aid changes. So even, over the course of the academic year, they'll still be receiving, the same award letter, to provide the most up-to-date information.
Great. And there are a couple of other questions regarding, is the letter printable to be PDF, and is the interface accessed through a CX or through their email? So the letter that goes, for campus communicator, it can be sent to the student through a personalized link for the student, which will come up in a PDF, and then they can print it. And you can send the letter to the student through text, and they can view it on their phone or their mobile device or whatever device they may be on. So yes, it can be printable to the PDF, and it can also go through email. Those are the questions that I thought. Michelle, do you have anything left to say, or as we wrap up this afternoon?
Yeah, one of the things that I do like to note is, as I mentioned before, if like an award got revised, the student will have access to be able to see both letters, and on there is a date. So they're able to see which one came first, which one came after, so that way they know what their most up-to-date awards are, which is wonderful, especially for the ones that are asking for more money, and they, go through the paperwork, they get more money. We're excited to be able to share that with them.
Wonderful. That's really good to hear. Tim, any last thoughts?
Sure. We did have another question that came in that's more of a general question about Ellucian and who we are. And so asking some questions about the other services that we provide. So if you're unfamiliar with Ellucian, we are the world's largest provider for higher education in the ERP space. That means your student information systems. You may be familiar with Banner or Colleague, those two systems, as well as DegreeWorks, degree audit system, and various other HR finance, other higher ed specific tools. And so SaaS provider, cloud provider for higher education. Today, obviously, we focused on the recruiting and admissions and financial aid space to help maximize your enrollment, but plenty of other tools that could assist you as well. And if you're not an Ellucian client already, if you're not utilizing Colleague or Banner, that's okay. We can make these tools available for you as well, connecting to your current student information system.
Thank you so much, Tim. And as we really close out this afternoon and talking about CRM Recruit and Campus Communicator, the key word for today is personalization. You can personalize these tools for you to work with your students and within your institution. It doesn't have to live in one area at your institution. It can live throughout the campus to support your students and the work that you do at your institution. And with that, I will say thank you, and I'll turn it back over to Belma if there is anything else that we need to address with ACRO this afternoon. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Janelle, and thank you, everyone. Before I close it off, is there anything else that, Tim, that you'd like to mention? Okay, well, on behalf of ACRO, we want to thank you all for joining us today, and we want to thank Ellucian for this great webinar. And this webinar is recorded, so you may watch this later today. And I wish you a great day. Thank you, everyone.